The market was loud, filled with voices, machines, and bright lights, but in the corner sat a girl that nobody noticed. Her clothes were torn, her face was covered with dust, and her thin hands clutched a small bowl. She looked poor, weaker than the others, and people walked past her like she was invisible. Merchants shouted about their goods. Guards laughed as they passed, and alien children pulled their mothers away when they saw her. Nobody cared for the beggar at the market. Nobody, until a human walked by. The human's name was Daniel. He was a traveler, not rich, not powerful, just a man who traded small items from Earth to survive on alien worlds. That day he had come to the market to sell a bag of old Earth spices, hoping to earn enough for his next trip. But as he passed the corner he saw her. She lifted her eyes and Daniel paused. Her eyes were not like those of a common beggar. They were sharp, glowing faintly in the light with a strength hidden beneath weakness. She whispered, "Food." Daniel had seen beggars before, but something about this girl felt different. He reached into his pack and pulled out a wrapped piece of bread, a small ration from his own supplies. He knelt and placed it into her hands. The girl's fingers trembled as she took it. She stared at him like she could not believe someone had noticed her. "Why?" she asked softly, her voice rough like someone who had not spoken in many days. Daniel smiled faintly. "Because you're hungry," he said. "And because I can." She hesitated, then ate quickly, but her eyes never left his face. Around them, some merchants whispered and chuckled. "Look at the human," one alien said. "Giving food to trash." Another laughed. "Humans are strange. They waste kindness." Daniel ignored them. He watched the girl eat, and he felt something stir in his chest. He did not know why, but he felt that giving her food was more important than selling his spices. After she finished, she lowered her head and whispered, "Thank you, human." Her voice was low, but Daniel noticed how carefully she spoke, almost like she had once been trained to speak in formal ways. Not like a beggar at all. He offered her water, and as she drank, Daniel noticed marks on her wrists. They were not random scars. They looked like restraints, as if she had been bound before. He also saw the way she sat, not the loose, careless way beggars usually slumped, but upright even in weakness, like she carried some hidden pride. "Who are you?" Daniel asked. The girl froze. For a moment her eyes turned cold like steel before she looked down again and said, "Nobody, just poor." Daniel didn't believe her, but he didn't push. He gave her another small piece of food and stood up. He thought that would be the end of it. A small act of kindness, nothing more. But as he turned to leave, he felt a strange pull, as if the story was not over. That night, as the market began to close, Daniel returned to his small rented room above a merchant shop. He tried to sleep, but the image of the girl's eyes kept coming back to him. Sharp, glowing and strong, like they belonged to someone who was hiding more than hunger. Outside in the shadows of the market, the beggar girl was not sleeping. She watched the stars above with quiet intensity. Her hand touched the mark on her wrist, and her eyes glowed faintly again. She whispered words in a language no one nearby could understand, words that sounded old and powerful. And then, from the rooftops, another pair of eyes was watching her. A figure hidden in the dark whispered into a small communicator. "She has been found. The girl lives. Inform the others. The beggar was not just a beggar. She was something more, something dangerous or important." Daniel had no idea that his simple kindness had been seen, and that it had tied him to her fate. Soon his life would change forever. But that night he only knew one thing. Tomorrow he would return to the market. He would look for her again, because deep down he felt the story had only begun. The next morning Daniel returned to the market earlier than usual. The air was still cool and the crowds had not yet filled the streets. He walked straight to the corner where the beggar girl had sat the day before. She was there again, her head lowered, hands empty, as if nothing had changed. But when she lifted her eyes and saw him, something flickered across her face. A small spark, almost like relief. Daniel smiled and placed another small packet of food in her hands. "You again," he said. The girl nodded slowly. "You came back." "Of course," Daniel replied. "You still look hungry." She hesitated before speaking. "Hungry is easy. Other things, not easy." Her words were strange, careful, like someone who had learned the language long ago but used it with formality, not like a street beggar should. Daniel studied her more closely. Her features were sharp, almost regal, even under the dirt. He noticed again the scars on her wrists. This time he asked, "Those marks, where did you get them?" The girl lowered her hands quickly, hiding them under her sleeves. Her voice went cold. "From chains. From those who caught me." Daniel frowned. "Who caught you? Slavers?" She looked away. For a moment she seemed afraid, then her eyes narrowed. "It does not matter. They think I am dead. I must remain." "Nobody." The way she said it made Daniel's skin prickle. "Nobody." She said it like it was a disguise, not the truth. Before Daniel could question her further, a group of aliens walked past, speaking in hushed tones. "Did you hear?" one whispered. "The missing heir. Still alive, they say. Hidden, the hunters are searching." The girl stiffened, her shoulders tightening. Her fingers clenched around the bread so hard that it broke apart. Daniel noticed. "You know something about that story?" Her voice trembled, but not from weakness, more like suppressed fire. "I know enough, but asking questions will bring you trouble, human." Daniel chuckled lightly, though unease settled in his chest. "Trouble finds me even when I don't ask questions. Comes with being human in alien markets." For the first time, the girl almost smiled, but it vanished quickly. She leaned closer and whispered, "Do not speak of heirs. Do not listen to rumors. Forget me." But Daniel could not forget. Something in her eyes told him she was connected to the whispers of the missing heir. He wanted to know more, but he also knew pushing her would only drive her away. Later that day, as the market grew louder, Daniel noticed shadows moving between the stalls. Strange men, cloaked, armed, watching. They were not merchants. They were searching. And their eyes often turned toward the corners, toward beggars, toward the girl. Daniel's chest tightened. He leaned closer to her and muttered, "Someone's looking for you, aren't they?" The girl's jaw clenched. Her hands shook, but her voice stayed calm. "They always look. That is why I must stay hidden." "Who are they?" Daniel asked. Her answer was a whisper. "Hunters, sent by those who fear me." Daniel's mind spun. Fear her? She looked like nothing more than a starving beggar. But inside, he began to believe she was more than she pretended to be. The hunters moved closer. Daniel noticed one of them lift a small device, scanning faces in the crowd. The girl ducked her head quickly, turning her face away. Daniel understood. If the scanner caught her, she was finished. Acting fast, he grabbed his pack and pulled out a worn hood, something he used for travel. He threw it over her head and whispered, "Keep your head down. Follow me." The girl looked at him in shock. "Why help me? You owe me nothing." Daniel gave her a steady look. "Because yesterday I gave you food. That makes you my responsibility now." For a moment she stared at him as if trying to measure his words. Then she nodded and stayed close. Together they slipped through the crowd, Daniel guiding her with calm movements. He had learned how to disappear in alien cities, how to blend into noise and chaos. By the time the hunters passed their corner, scanning the shadows, the beggar girl was gone. That evening, Daniel led her to a quiet rooftop away from the markets. There, under the fading sun, he finally asked again, "Who are you really?" She looked at him for a long time. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. Finally, she said, "My name does not matter, but once I was not poor. Once I was not nobody. I was someone they feared." Daniel's breath caught. He didn't know if she was a fugitive, a princess, or something else. But one thing was clear. She was no ordinary beggar, and his simple kindness had placed him in the middle of a secret that could change everything. The night was quiet but not peaceful. The trade city never truly slept, and faint sounds of music and machines drifted through the streets. Daniel sat awake in his small room, staring at the dim lantern light. He should have been resting for tomorrow's trading, but his mind was heavy. The beggar girl's words, her glowing eyes, and the way she spoke of chains and hunters, they all kept him restless. He stood up and looked out the window toward the market square. Somewhere out there she was hiding in the shadows. He thought about the hunters with their scanners moving like wolves. He knew they would not stop searching. Just as he turned to lie down, the city shook. A sharp explosion tore through the silence, shaking the walls. Shouts followed, then alarms. Daniel rushed to the window and saw fire rising from one of the towers near the outer wall. Raiders. The city had been attacked before, bands of mercenaries and smugglers who struck at night, stealing supplies and lives before vanishing into the stars. But this time it felt different. The raiders moved fast, too fast. like they knew exactly where to strike. Daniel grabbed his small pack, ready to escape if the attack spread. But before he could leave, he froze. Down in the streets near the market corner, he saw her. The beggar girl. She wasn't running. She wasn't crying like the other citizens who fled. She was standing still, her eyes locked on the raiders with a calm Daniel couldn't understand. And then she moved. In the chaos, he watched as she slipped behind one of the armed raiders. Her thin hands reached up, and in a blur of motion, she twisted the alien's weapon out of his grip and struck him across the throat. The raider dropped instantly. Daniel's heart pounded. That was no beggar's movement. That was trained, sharp, deadly. He rushed down the stairs and into the streets, dodging panicked crowds. When he reached her, she was already holding the weapon like it belonged to her. Her dirty clothes still hung loose, but in that moment she looked nothing like a starving girl. "What are you doing?" Daniel shouted. Her eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. "Surviving." Another raider spotted them and charged forward. Before Daniel could react, the girl stepped in front. She fired the stolen weapon with precise aim, dropping the enemy with a single shot. Daniel stumbled back, stunned. "You can fight," he gasped. She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed his arm and pulled him into an alley. "Stay close. They will kill anyone who sees me." "Why?" Daniel demanded, her grip tightened. "Because I am not who they think I am, and neither are you anymore." The words chilled him. He didn't have time to argue. More raiders were pouring into the streets, setting fire to shops and dragging captives. Daniel followed her through the smoke, his heart racing. They ducked behind broken stalls until the girl stopped suddenly. She pressed her hand against the wall, whispering words Daniel couldn't understand. Strange symbols glowed faintly under her palm before fading. Daniel's mouth went dry. What was that? She looked back at him, her eyes burning brighter now. "Language of my blood. I should not speak it. But to protect us, I must." Daniel realized then. She wasn't just trained, she was born into something powerful. Whoever she was, she carried secrets far greater than hunger. Suddenly, 3 raiders spotted them and opened fire. Daniel hit the ground, covering his head, but the girl didn't flinch. She raised her stolen weapon, rolled to the side with fluid grace, and fired back. Each shot was perfect, dropping the raiders one by one. When it was over, Daniel stared at her, speechless. "You're not a beggar." Her chest rose and fell as she caught her breath. "No," she admitted. "But if you keep helping me, you will become their target too." Daniel swallowed hard. His instincts screamed to run, to escape the danger and leave her behind. But something inside him refused. He remembered the way she looked at him when he gave her food, the way her voice softened when she said thank you. He couldn't leave her. "I already chose," Daniel said quietly. "Yesterday when I gave you bread." For a moment, her expression cracked. Something close to sadness, or maybe hope, passed over her face. She nodded once. "Then we stand together." The fire spread through the city, smoke covering the stars above. Alarms kept ringing, but Daniel barely heard them. His world had narrowed to the girl beside him, her glowing eyes and the weapon in her hands. The beggar at the market was gone. In her place stood someone else, someone dangerous, someone hunted, someone whose secret was about to change his fate, and the night attack was only the beginning. Smoke still clung to the city as dawn broke. The fires from the night raid had been put out, but the air smelled of ash and fear. People whispered of the attack, of the raiders who struck too swiftly and vanished too suddenly. Yet Daniel knew the truth. Those raiders had not come only for loot. They had come for her. The girl sat silently on the rooftop where they had taken shelter. The morning sun touched her face, and Daniel saw her clearly for the first time. Beneath the dirt, beneath the torn clothes, there was no weakness. Her posture was straight, her eyes sharp, her presence strong. She didn't look like a beggar at all. Daniel broke the silence. "Last night? The way you fought, the way you spoke those words. Who are you, really?" She didn't answer at first. Her gaze stayed on the horizon, where the smoke rose like black scars. Finally, she said, "My name is Celira." Daniel frowned. The name meant nothing to him. "Celira," he repeated. "That's all?" Her eyes glowed faintly in the sunlight, not just with hunger or anger, but with something heavier, authority. "Once," she whispered, "it was more than enough to shake empires, but now—" "I must keep it hidden." Daniel waited, sensing she was holding back more. He had learned that silence often spoke louder than words. Finally, she turned to him. "You think me a beggar because of chains and dust, but in truth I was born to a line that rules. I am not poor. I am not lost, I am heir. Daniel's breath caught. Heir? You mean, yes, she interrupted. The heir they whispered about in the market? The one they thought dead. The one the hunters still chase. Her voice hardened. I am Salira of the Caliph line. Blood of the last queen, Daniel stepped back. The Caliph name was not familiar to most humans, but even he had heard faint tales whispered among traders. A powerful house. A bloodline connected to old thrones and ancient wars. A dynasty thought to be broken. You're telling me you're royalty? Daniel asked, half in disbelief. Salira's expression didn't waver. Not just royalty, a threat. To those who stole my throne, I am a danger simply by living. Daniel tried to process it. A day ago, she had been a starving girl clutching bread with trembling hands. Now she claimed to be the heir of an alien queen. But her eyes, her movements, her strength last night, they all supported her words. He rubbed his face and let out a breath. And I thought I was just giving food to someone hungry. Salira looked at him sharply. That food saved me. But more, it bound you to me. Do you understand? The hunters saw you with me. Now they will not stop. They will hunt you as well. Daniel met her gaze. Then I guess I'm already part of this. For the first time, Salira's face softened. You are foolish, human, but brave. Their conversation was cut short by movement below. Daniel leaned over the edge of the roof and saw armored patrols moving through the streets. Not raiders this time, soldiers. Their banners bore the mark of the ruling council, the same council that had taken power after Salira's line was declared broken. They're searching, Daniel muttered. Salira's jaw tightened. For me, Daniel's chest tightened with unease. Then we need to leave the city. Salira shook her head. No, if we run now, they will only chase. I must decide if I hide again, or if I rise. Her words were heavy, filled with something Daniel couldn't fully grasp. She wasn't just speaking about survival. She was speaking about destiny. As they prepared to move, Daniel asked one last question. Why tell me this? Why not keep hiding? Salira studied him. Because you gave kindness when no one else would. You gave me food and more. You saw me as alive, not invisible. That is why I trust you with truth. Daniel felt the weight of her words. He was no soldier, no leader, just a human trader with a pack of spices. Yet somehow he had been pulled into the orbit of someone who could shake worlds. The sound of boots and metal drew closer. Salira pulled the hood over her head once more. Her eyes glowed faintly beneath the shadow as she whispered, Stay near me, Daniel. The moment you stepped into my story, fate changed. Yours and mine. Daniel gripped the strap of his pack tightly. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he knew there was no turning back. As soldiers searched below, Salira and Daniel slipped into the smoke-stained streets. The world thought the heir of Caliph was dead. But now she was alive, moving through the city with a human by her side. And soon the galaxy would know. The city could no longer hide them. By the second night after the raid, Salira and Daniel slipped past the watchtowers, leaving behind the broken streets and the searching soldiers. They moved in silence through alleys and abandoned tunnels until they reached the spaceport. The port was alive with noise, ships of every size lifting into the night sky, merchants shouting, guards patrolling. Daniel pulled his hood lower. He had used this port many times, but never while being hunted. This time he felt every gaze like a knife. Salira walked beside him, calm, almost regal even under the hood. Daniel whispered, Do you even know where you're going? Her eyes glowed faintly. Away, far from here. But not without risk, he sighed. Story of my life lately. They slipped through the crowds toward a small freighter dock. Daniel had a friend there, an old pilot who owed him favors. With luck, the man would not ask too many questions. But luck was short. As they neared the docking gates, Daniel felt a chill. A group of armored hunters had already arrived, scanning passengers as they passed. Their devices glowed red whenever they locked onto a face. Salira tensed. They're close, Daniel thought quickly. He grabbed a crate from a nearby stall, shoved it into Salira's hands, and whispered, Carry it like cargo. Keep your face low. Together they moved into the line. Daniel forced himself to look calm, though his heart pounded. The scanner swept across faces one by one. When it neared Salira, she tilted her head just enough to let the hood shadow her features. The device flickered but did not alarm. They passed through. Minutes later, they were aboard the freighter. Daniel's old contact, a gruff alien with rust-colored skin named Bran, squinted at them. You're late, human. And you brought a friend? Daniel forced a grin. She's quiet. Won't cause trouble. Just need passage out of this sector. Bran's eyes narrowed. You smell of trouble already? But your credits are still good? Daniel handed him a pouch. Bran checked it and grunted. Fine, find a corner. Don't speak. The freighter lifted from the port, engines humming. Daniel sat on the metal floor, watching the planet shrink away through a small window. Relief washed over him, but it didn't last long. Celira sat opposite, her hood lowered now. They will follow, she said softly. Hunters do not give up. Not when they know I live. Daniel rubbed his temples. Then tell me why. Why are they so desperate to find you? Her gaze locked with his. Because my bloodline can challenge their power. Because even if I sit in rags, my name threatens their throne. Daniel shook his head. But you're alone. What can one person do against an empire? Celira's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. One person with the right allies can start a fire that burns across stars. Before Daniel could reply, the ship jolted. Alarms blared and Bran's voice cursed over the comms. We've got pursuit. 2 crafts on our tail. Daniel's stomach dropped. Already? Celira rose, her calm unshaken. I told you. They will not stop. The ship rocked again as a laser fire struck the shields. Daniel stumbled, grabbing a pipe to steady himself. Bran's voice roared again. Who did you bring onto my ship, human? Celira moved to the cockpit door, her presence commanding even in the chaos. Open the gun controls, she said. Bran barked a laugh. You're a passenger. Her eyes burned brighter. I am more than that. Open them. Something in her tone cut through the pilot's anger. With a snarl, he hit the release. Celira stepped into the weapon station, her hands flying across controls with precision that shocked Daniel. The cannons roared, and streaks of light filled the void. Celira's shots were perfect, striking one hunter craft until it exploded into flame. The second ship dodged, circling for another attack, but Celira tracked it with calm focus. She fired again, the blast cutting across the stars, and the second craft veered away, limping into hyperspace. Silence filled the freighter. Bran turned wide-eyed. What in the void are you? Celira lowered her hand slowly. Her voice was steady. A beggar, you thought. But I am Celira of Calith. Remember that name. Daniel stared at her, still breathless. She looked like a warrior, a commander, not a starving girl. For the first time, he began to believe fully. She wasn't only running. She was preparing. The freighter pushed deeper into the black sea of space. Daniel sat again, his thoughts heavy. He had given food to a stranger, and now he was flying across the stars with a hidden heir, hunted by empires and deep inside. He knew his fate would never be his own again. The freighter drifted through the endless dark, engines humming low. Hours had passed since the hunters were driven away, yet the tension remained. Daniel sat on the cold floor staring at Celira. She had not moved from her seat since the battle, her glowing eyes fixed on the stars outside. Daniel broke the silence. So, what now? We keep running forever? Celira turned her head slowly, her expression unreadable. Running is not life, but staying means death. Daniel rubbed his face. Great choices. Keep hiding until we're caught or die sooner. Her voice softened. You do not understand. My return is not just my life, it is war. If I rise, the ones who stole my throne will burn entire worlds to stop me. Daniel froze. He had guessed she was important, but not that her survival could mean war across the stars. Then maybe you should just disappear. The words slipped out before he could stop them. For the first time, Celira's eyes flashed with anger. Disappear? My people are enslaved, broken, ruled by cowards who wear crowns they stole. If I vanish, they suffer forever. Daniel looked away. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a hero. He was a traitor, a survivor. He had lived by avoiding fights, not starting them. Yet her words cut him. He thought of her sitting in the dirt at the market, invisible to everyone, starving while they laughed. He had hated that. Now he realized, if she gave up, her people would remain in that same corner forever, ignored, powerless. Bran's voice echoed from the cockpit. We can't keep this up, human. Hunters won't stop chasing us. I don't care who your friend is, she's a curse to anyone near her. Daniel stood, frustration boiling. He pushed open the cockpit door. She's not a curse. She saved your ship. You'd be space dust if not for her. Bran sneered. And how long until they send 10 ships or 20? You think she can stop an empire with her glowing eyes? Daniel clenched his fists, but before he could answer, Salira appeared behind him. Her voice was calm but sharp as steel. Yes, if I rise, if I lead, I can. Bran laughed harshly. And you expect this human to die for you, princess? Daniel spun, about to argue, but Salira's gaze locked onto him. She wasn't laughing. She was waiting for his answer. Daniel's throat felt tight. This was the moment. He could walk away. He could ask Bran to drop him at the next station, return to his quiet life of trade and wandering. He could forget her, forget the hunters, forget the throne. But he remembered her voice on that first day. Why? She had asked when he gave her food. And he had answered, because you're hungry. It had been simple, but now it wasn't about food anymore. He took a deep breath. I'm not royalty. I'm not a fighter. But I made a choice the day I saw you. I won't leave you now. Salira's eyes softened. For a moment, the weight she carried seemed to lighten. You would stand beside me? Even knowing what it means. Daniel nodded firmly. Yeah, because if I walk away, I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. Bran swore under his breath. Humans are mad. But there was no laughter in his voice anymore. Only respect. Salira stepped closer to Daniel. Then hear me, human. If you stay, you are no longer just a traitor. You will be my ally, my shield, and they will call you enemy too. Daniel's chest tightened. Enemy of an empire. It sounded insane. But when she said ally, he felt something powerful stir in him, a purpose he had never known. I'll take that risk, he said quietly. Salira held his gaze, and for the first time she bowed her head slightly, not as a beggar, but as royalty honoring another. Then you have my loyalty, Daniel of Earth, and my trust. The hum of the ship filled the silence between them. Daniel felt the weight of his decision press down, but beneath it, he felt something else, a fire. He was no longer just a man drifting between worlds. He had chosen his place, beside her. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, Daniel knew one thing. Loyalty had bound him to a destiny far greater than trade or survival. The freighter glided through the endless dark, its engines leaving faint trails of light behind. Daniel sat near the window, staring at the stars. He had traveled among them before, but tonight they felt different. They no longer looked like places to trade or escape. They looked like roads leading to a fate he could not avoid. Salira stood at the center of the small cabin, her presence quiet but commanding. Even without her throne, even without fine robes, she looked like someone born to lead. Her glowing eyes moved from the stars to Daniel. You chose, she said softly. Daniel nodded. I did. But choosing and living with that choice were different things. He felt the weight of it every moment. He wasn't only hunted now. He was bound to her destiny. The hunters would never stop, and the empire she spoke of would never forgive. The freighter jolted suddenly. Bran's voice cracked through the comms. Incoming vessels!
They found us again.
Daniel jumped to his feet. Already? Salira's jaw tightened. They will chase until I stand or fall. The ship rocked as blasts struck the shields. Bran cursed from the cockpit. 2 warships. We can't outrun them this time. Daniel's chest burned with fear, but before panic could take him, Salira placed a hand on his shoulder. Do not fear, Daniel. Fate has already turned. He met her eyes. There was no fear in them, only fire. The hunters' ships drew closer, their weapons glowing. Bran shouted, We'll be ripped apart. Salira stepped forward, her voice firm. Not if I reveal myself. Daniel grabbed her arm. What are you saying? Her gaze locked on his. I can no longer hide. If I keep running, they will destroy everything in their path until they catch me. But if I rise, if I show them I live, then the galaxy will know. The people will remember who I am. Daniel shook his head. But that will paint a target bigger than ever. Salira's voice softened. It already is. But now you stand with me. That changes everything. The words struck him deep. He realized she didn't see him as a stranger anymore. She saw him as part of her fate. The freighter shook again, alarms wailing. Bran shouted, Decide fast or we're finished. Salira stepped into the cockpit, her glowing eyes burning like twin suns. She pressed a control panel and opened a channel. Her voice carried through the ship, strong and regal. This is Salira of the Calith line, daughter of the last queen, heir of the throne. To those who hunt me, I live, and I will rise. Her words echoed into the void. For a moment, even the hunter's ship seemed to hesitate. Then came the reply, cold and sharp. Salira. So it is true. You breathe still. Then today, we finish what we started. Daniel's heart pounded, but he saw something shift in Bren. The old pilot looked at Celira with wide eyes, no longer mocking, no longer doubting. You really are her, he whispered. Celira turned to him. Set course for the rim colonies. My people wait in chains. If they hear my voice, they will rise. Bran swallowed, then nodded. I, heir of Calith. The hunters fired again, but this time Celira moved to the weapons station. Daniel stood beside her, ready though he had no training. Tell me what to do, he said. Her eyes flicked to him, a faint warmth in their glow. Stay by me. That is enough. Together they fired back. Blasts cut across the stars, shaking the hunters' ships. Daniel's hands trembled, but Celira's calm guided him. For the first time, he felt like more than just a survivor. He felt like part of something greater. After long minutes, one hunter ship exploded, fire blooming in the void. The other limped away, retreating into hyperspace. Silence fell in the freighter. The alarm stopped, leaving only the hum of the engines. Daniel collapsed into a chair, breathless. We did it. Celira stood tall, her eyes still burning. No, Daniel. This was only the beginning. Word will spread. The Empire will send fleets. But so will hope spread among my people. They will know I live. They will wait for me. Daniel looked at her, the so-called beggar he had once fed in a corner of a dusty market. She was no beggar now. She was heir, warrior, leader, and him. He was no longer just a traitor. He was the human who had given her kindness when no one else would. That small act had bound him to her forever. Celira placed a hand over his. Your fate has changed, Daniel of Earth. Because of you, mine has too. Alone I was a shadow. With you I will become light. Daniel squeezed her hand. He had no throne, no crown, no bloodline. But in that moment he felt richer than kings. The stars stretched before them, endless roads waiting to be walked. And together, they stepped into destiny. The kindness of one human had awakened a storm across the galaxy, and fate would never be the same again.